I guess you have in-game music now. Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to see you all again. Superior Blaze, thank you very much for that host, and hello to everybody from Superior Blaze's stream. Feels like it's been a while since I have picked up on this story of a rather strange but wonderful English family known as the Roses. Obviously, we had the power out last week, so apologies for that. And my decision was that I didn't want to do another... I didn't want to unexpectedly do the stream on another day and then have everybody miss out, because we did end on still an unintentional, but what is still a cliffhanger, simply because we've not quite finished this war with the Abbasid Empire. My goodness, it's a lot of you hitting the favorite button on that. Thank you, everybody, for retweeting and favoriting and following and doing all those wonderful things that you do on Twitch. I'll get the biographical stuff out of the way first while everybody has a chance to file in. I have been working on a research project basically since graduation, and it looks like that is starting to... It kind of looks like that's starting to settle down. I'm not quite sure what's going on with this. Basically, I kind of got the information that I needed. And it wasn't like, when I talked with the prof, it was a little up in the air. It was sort of, I don't think I'm going to need anything else from you, but just be available. But other than that, I'm under the impression now that I'm not going to have any other sort of school-style obligations except for the ones that I put upon myself. I've registered for classes very early this morning and got all the courses that I wanted, so happy with that. I'm going to try something different. And then, what else to say, really? Well, I am hoping to learn Unity. That's probably the extent of... Well, that's not true, actually. So there's a couple of econ-related things that I'm going to do on my own account. The math review is actually already posted, and they sort of say that they want you to work on that from June to September. But if I just do homework stuff, I'm going to be really stressed out at the beginning of the MA, and I'm supposed to be stressed out at the end of the MA. So I will try to be responsible in doing it, but not overzealous. But yeah, one of the things that I told myself I would try and do over the summer, which I haven't done yet, just simply because of my my other obligations, is to actually teach myself Unity. I have a suspicion I'll probably not be able to complete a game now because of how I've sort of spent the beginning of the summer. But it would be interesting to do as much as I can on that front and just see if there's a way to, I don't know, get on track with something I'm happy with. I've had a few ideas for a while now that I'd like to follow through with, but I think a little bit more importantly, I'd like to become, reasonably well versed in the tools so that when I run into colleagues and friends in the computer science department, it'd be nice to be able to have a common language in which we could work, other than C#, which is obviously the main scripting language of that one. But no, just basically to have a platform that we can discuss, and to, if I can't make a title on my own, at least maybe contribute meaningfully to somebody else's project, or even just discuss some ideas with them and see where these things go. Anyways, there's a few bodies in here now. Let's figure out how we're going to deal with my good Muslim neighbors who declared war on me. We're not doing too bad in this war. We're at a 43% war score. They do have some troubling numbers. But my solution to that is going to be mercenaries. Basically, I'm sitting on about 2,500 gold right now. And any this is also ignoring holy orders, which, I mean, let's face it, they're not exactly going to be, you know, knocking the ball out of the park with their numbers. But basically, I can get 20,000 mercenaries for 450 gold. So the largest stack that they have, I'm able to address. In fact, I can more or less almost deal with all of their forces with one 450 gold mercenary stack. So what I'm actually going to do is get two. What I might do is take one that's really archer heavy and then one that is foot soldier heavy. And the idea, like the challenge on this one is that I could potentially run out of money, at which point I am screwed. But basically, dead mercenaries don't cost money. So what I'm going to do with this is take these 40,000 troops, you know, send them careening into the Holy Land. They will start not paying for themselves, but they'll at least sort of become less costly as they die. And then the nice thing about it is if they survive long enough to see the end of the war, and I'm not too strapped for cash, I can turn around and use those same mercenaries to declare holy war on the Abbasids again, and in this case, turn this little invasion into some territory expansion. So the drawback is I could do what I did last cast, which is mismanage my army to a point where I wind up wasting this money and we're still sort of at square one. But I think this one's going to work out. If we want to put some numbers on this encounter, the Abbasid Empire at the moment is sitting on 41,000 troops. So effectively spending just a little under half of my current wealth, and then of course the monthly expenses for these mercenary troops, I'm able to raise a force that's equal to the enemy. And of course, they're running out of money. They've taken out 600 in loans. They are sitting on 415 gold right now, and I'm going to be basically I'm going to be raising those costs as I sort of run in and start taking things away from them. So, enough jibba jabba. Let's set this into place. So the mercenary groups I'm going for, I'm mostly just looking at archers here. So I've got, 9,000 heavy infantry, 62 light infantry. So in this case here, I particularly like the archers. They're very weak on morale, but they're a nice little sort of skirmish unit to take at the very beginning. Also, the monthly cost isn't as high as some of these other alternatives. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hire this company. And then, again, I want to make sure that I'm keeping those numbers high. So my choices here are the 159.73 or 129 monthly cost. So this one is fairly appealing just from a cost point of view. But I also like the composition a little bit more. The cavalry isn't anything to go crazy about, but then that could be said about all of my forces. I'm particularly attracted, though, to the fairly large component of heavy infantry. Now, again, here, if I wanted to go all in, this would be a fairly sensible choice, but I would actually like a little bit more balance. The light infantry isn't exactly that impressive in this company. So if I combine these two here, I have about 7,000 light infantry, about 20,000 heavy infantry, and about 10,000 archers. So overall, I'm just a little bit happier in terms of the overall composition, and it actually costs less if I go for these two companies. And now I'm starving them to death, so I'm already off to a disastrous start with these. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to... now that my spy master is done threatening my vassals, I can start working on any other factions. Not too many left. Oh god, I forgot where they are. Dublin. So again, I mean, this isn't a very credible threat, but the big thing is I want to deal with these things before they actually become a problem. I would love to do some ransoming of hostages, but again, the thing you want to do that at the end of the war so you don't throw away some of your war score. And I don't gain anything by banishing these figures, so I'll leave them around. So, an oversight as far as hiring the mercenary companies are concerned. I'm already losing troops because they are starving in the capital. And that's an unavoidable loss. I'm going to need to wait until they actually move out of this region for those to stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them to the bottom of the island. I'm going to wait till their morale goes up. That's when I'm going to hire the ships, and then I will drag them into the Holy Land. Again, you can see that they're fairly effective at eating up money, so I want to be careful in terms of how long I wait for this sort of stuff. But the ships tend to be the largest expense, so I don't feel too bad taking this approach. Oh, you know what? One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the cast was, obviously, I'm sure everybody knows that the Steam sale is on now. Crusader Kings is, I believe, 50% off at the moment. What I would recommend for anybody who is interested in the title will cost me... Normally I would say no if I want to save money, but 49 gold isn't that much, so I'll hold off. I think I'm just... They're tracking each other pretty well, so I'm actually just going to stagger these two here. And the papacy is offered to join the war, which is fantastic news for me. That's basically more bodies to throw at the... Throw more bodies at the Abbasids. I don't believe you lose morale on the ship so much as you lose morale when you disembark. I'm not so much worried about morale, though. I'm worried about my numbers, like my the size of the force. The war isn't going quite as I thought. I lose more men per battle than I planned in sieges, and the sieges are going on forever. More manpower, more siege weapons are what I need. Perhaps a friend could assist me with this. So, I could ask a friend to join the war. I don't think this Baron is really going to give... Yeah, 1,000 troops isn't all that impressive, so I will ask for monetary support, and in that case, that's just going to keep my... that's just going to keep those mercenaries paid for. Oh, and I believe my Chancellor is working on a noble who's no longer conspiring against me. So, sorry, a little dazed and confused at the beginning of the cast today. So the Steam sale is on right now. Crusader Kings is getting a 50% discount, I believe, on the core game and most of the DLC. The exception to that is the Way of Life expansion. You'll notice I'm still not playing that. And my general... I mean, take this as you will. I'm not entirely sure that this is news to anybody, but my general recommendation, if you are interested in picking up Crusader Kings 2, or if you have your eye on some DLC, right now, the deals that are currently being served are they're just the sale-wide ones. So, pretty much for any title that you can get inside of the Steam sale, if you just see it at the regular sale price, the only reason why you would want that is if for what, the value of picking up that game right away is worth more than, whatever potential discount is going to be coming up in the future. Now, the thing is that most people put off these purchases precisely for the Steam sale, so I don't actually believe that buying it, I don't think anybody's going to say, oh, I got to get Crusader Kings right now. I've been waiting forever, right? You can wait another 10 days, or less than 10 days as the case may be. So what I would suggest, I mean, it's not unheard of for this thing to go on like a flash sale or a daily deal. So it seems to me that anybody who's been waiting this long is okay to wait, the duration of the sale for a sale that might not come. I suspect that this thing's going to be available for cheaper than 50%. Maybe not the DLC, but you never know, right? So if it's a game that I'm really on the fence about, even if I see it on a daily deal, I usually hold off because a lot of the daily deals come back on the very last day. If it's a flash sale, then I pick it up because the flash sales are basically going to be the lowest price that you can get. I think maybe once I saw, a case where a game went on even lower, but that's pretty rare. If it happens at all, I could also be not remembering correctly. But basically, for Crusader Kings 2 and pretty much any title that you see right now that does not have, a 48-hour or less counter on it, there's literally no reason for you to pick that up right now. Unless it literally is a question of you cannot wait 1 week for another discount. But again, if you've been waiting for the Steam sale, it's ridiculous to say that you've been waiting half a year, so now you can't wait 10 days. But yeah, with that in mind, I think, I certainly get a lot out of Crusader Kings 2. I enjoy Crusader Kings 2, and I like casting it for everybody, and like discussing it. But if you are interested in picking up this game, it's probably just as well that you wait for it to come on a flash sale or wait for it to wait till the very last day of the sale. Like basically on the last day of the sale, the worst that's happened is, okay, I didn't get a better deal. And as for myself, I'm not crazy about a 33% discount on Way of Life. I actually think that's kind of cheap, but I'm interested enough in that DLC that I'll pick it up, and the next DLC has been announced. But, well, actually, yeah, it'll probably go like 50% off when they release the next DLC. They normally put the game on sale when they release a new expansion, so I don't know. I'm probably okay spending the 33% discount on Way of Life. But the biggest thing I can recommend for this game, get the core game, get the expansions that you're interested in when there's a good price, and then just slowly add to your collection as time goes on. The more DLC you get, the more complexity you add in the game, and most people want to lower the complexity at the start. So, take that as you will. My letter to Baron Onlaf could have gotten lost in a number of ways, and truthfully, sometimes I wished it would. The shame of having to ask a friend for help gnawed at me until I got Baron Onlaf's response. He sent me money for troops. I've got 5.5 wealth. Yay. So, I mean, the nice thing is that we've got a lot of people on my side for this war. The problem is that so many of them are just not that strong. What? I mean, again, it's not... Well... Yeah, so I mean... We're sitting at, formerly 40,000 troops, significantly less now just from walking across England. I still think this is the best way to go if we take a look at the... Okay, their 15,000 stack went away, which slightly terrifies me. Actually, if I'm lucky, they put it up... Well, I don't think these boats would be able to hold the 15,000, but if I'm lucky, they've put them on a boat somewhere. Because if they attack my territories... if they attack my territories where I can put my own troops, that puts me in a better... it puts me in a better position overall to push them away. Sorry, I'm not I can't English at the moment. Ewok Fuzzy Nuts, how's it going? You were playing Massive Chalice today, and you thought of me. Is that because Massive Chalice has some similarities to... Crusader Kings 2? I've heard this, but I haven't actually... I've not seen it myself. So I just want to make sure that I have enough. I think I'm going to take the 254 ship just in case. Yep. Alright, so the point I was trying to make earlier was if they've put them on ships, there's basically 3 places that they could go. They could go to Africa, which is probably my weakest point of defense against that. They could go to kind of Spain. At that point I feel a little bit more comfortable, at least it's in close proximity. And in the best case would be they go on England. The reason why I'm using purely mercenaries at the moment is because not committing my personal troops will give me time to sort of rebuild those forces, and that way if I want to do my own invasion, I'm fresh, I'm ready to go. You know what, I think I'm just gonna drop this ship and take these 2. My friend Alex, who occasionally stops by the stream, has said the same thing. He put it on his wish list. I haven't actually seen if he got it or not, but I'm interested. I mean, obviously the developer, Double Fine, has earned more than a little goodwill for the quality of the games that they make, but the one thing I tend to notice, especially with games like Crusader Kings 2 and Endless Space and Endless Legend and all of these ones, I'm actually starting to get to a point where I have so many of them I don't actually have enough time to dedicate to like really sitting down and learning them and working out an ideal strategy or anything like that. So I think if it goes on a sufficiently attractive discount, I'll probably pick up Massive Chalice. But I'm also, like, I believe it's still in early access, so I'm not too, like, I can wait until the game is done and then try it out then. And there's the stack that I was looking for, so even with the loss of troops, we're still in a good state. And we got exactly what we wanted, which is the Byzantine Empire participating in this conflict. So we are spending a lot of money, which frightens me. But if we can deal sort of a decisive blow to the Abbasids in this territory, we should be good. I can ask for more monetary help, but I honestly don't expect a lot. Speaking of XCOM, I hope everybody has seen the trailer for XCOM 2. I thought that was an extremely attractive piece of advertising. Dear Baron Onloof, my duties to my family and my vassals disallows me to help you at this moment. I hope the war will turn to your favor, and I wish that you win the war quickly. I also have about 600 gold worth of reserves by borrowing and then expelling the Jewry. Well, borrowing from and then expelling the Jewry. But that's obviously an option that I want to hold off on. Although I'm spending a lot. Man, that's 185 a turn. Alright, I think I gotta go for it. What I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna take this stack and I'm just gonna crash it straight into the 13,000 troops. That sort of seems to be the best way to make the most out of what I have. Because there's a side of me that's terrified I'm gonna have spent all this money and spent all this money just to, you know, land them in a basically, I spent all this money to just have them abandon me for lack of funds. Got it for free on Xbox One. You can't get it cheaper than that. That is true. Okay, so let's figure out what they can supply. The 23,000 here, 21. It's really no good way to do this. So this is working to my advantage just simply because they're... Now it's turned on them that they're starving in the regions. And I still have enough troops to actually cause problems for them. So first thing I'm going to do... Actually, as much as I hate to do this, it's the cheapest thing that I can do, which is disband it right now. I'm going to lose half of these ships. But I have more than enough to replace it. Oh, and Massive Chalice is out of early access. I didn't know that. You've got so many hours in XCOM. That's what you're excited for the most. And this time they're allowing mods. I thought there were mods. I know I was making fun of Dahlia for putting in something that prevented... I can't remember exactly what it did. It held the enemy aliens in place so they couldn't move as soon as... Like, you know how you'll discover them and then they'll scurry away? I think he put in a mod that stopped them from doing that. No, not a problem, Ewok Crazy Nuts. Thanks a lot for stopping by. It's good to see you again. Eventually I'm going to figure out how to speak properly during the stream as well, but at this point here, we're just bankrupting the kingdom, finishing off this war that we started 2 streams ago, so... Nothing too exciting for the next little bit. Enjoy Orange is the New Black. I think it fell into the trap that they did, which was... Oop. Ask for monetary help again. Now, we're getting crushed here, so I need to move my extra troops in place pretty quickly. Excellent. So now what I'm going to do is half of my forces I'm going to take to the... and recapture this province. And then the other half, I'm going to chase down that large stack. So they are heading here. And he gave us some money. I didn't bother to check how much, though. We're doing okay for money still. I still don't quite understand why we're spending so much a month. Because of the mercenaries. I should have known that. Yeah, I still think we can afford this, but it's a little shaky. And again, too, the biggest thing is as long as I don't spend too much, I should be okay for bringing my own troops in. The biggest worry is if I run out of money and then I can't afford to bring ships over without losing a lot of morale. So sort of the whole point of this excursion is just to do as much damage as I can to the individual Abbasid forces. It's actually desirable to lose as many mercenaries in this fight as possible, just because I don't have to pay them as much. I could actually possibly get rid of them right now, but it's also really tempting to just claim some more provinces. I don't know what to do. I think I'll get them to at least start conducting some sieges in hopes of finishing off this war quickly. Well, you know what? They're going to starve anywhere, so... New plan, we're just going to sweep up as many of these groups as I can. A famous herald, well-versed in the diplomatic protocol, has arrived at our court. He's proposing his services to us, and our chamberlain is saying that he can make good use of this man. It'll cost me 36 gold, so I'll say another mouth to feed is not what I need. I'll lose 5 prestige for that, but at this point I kind of need to keep my expenses in check. I think I'll disband this group as well. So what are we looking at for religion? So it's still okay for money, which is mildly concerning. So I think I'll keep these troops till basically the end of the month, and then I'll clear everything out. And now I basically just reclaim the provinces that I had before. So the war score is sufficient to... I mean, at this point, I just kind of need to hold out. There could be an argument for me just disbanding this mercenary group and letting it tick out. But what I think what I'm going to do, because it's going to cost me to rehire them, I'm going to make a judgment call and actually try and move into some of the Abbasid territories. It'd be great if I could get his personal holdings, but I don't think... There's not a whole lot that I can really work with, I don't think. Oh, that's really tempting, actually. Yeah, let's see what happens when we make a move here. I mean, if we're lucky too, the steward's going to wind up earning some tax money, but I'm not holding my breath. So depending on how my gold situation turns out, at the end of this war, I think I would have to disband my mercenary troops and then just take the, my individual troops and levies and so on and so forth, and then just do a straight invasion into Abbasid territory. Again, the numbers are generally in my favor. The challenge is that right now I have a lot of allies, such as the Byzantine Empire. And as soon as this war is done, I'm going to lose all of those allies. I feel like my Chancellor could be doing something more useful. I have no idea how much that was costing me, but we'll get rid of it. Actually, I should have all of these levies should be done. So we're actually pretty much at full strength now with our individual holdings, which is nice. So I think that's, again, keeping an eye on the gold. I think an individual invasion of the Abbasid territory is the way to handle this. Hey, Red Pain, how's it going? Alright, I gotta find something better for my my Chancellor and my Spy Master to do. We will steal technology. Let's go to Damascus because we're crazy. And my Chancellor... I don't see massive benefit in stowing that much dissent, actually. I think I'll just make my vassals like me. Limmel, how's it going? Got to see Limmel on the last Monday at the or not Monday, Sunday at the EXP Vancouver Twitch meetup. We got to he actually was also the one to point me out to Miss Ariella, who I had to spend the better part of the evening sending tweets to because I was sort of stuck in my own little booth, not leaving, so... You know, Red Pain, I've had this opinion of the last couple of Steam sales. I believe, like, I'm going to associate it with their hiring of economists. I think they've recognized that they're giving away too much. What I have recommended, and what I will encourage you to do as well, is just wait to see what goes on flash sales. If it's something that you legitimately want, a daily deal is a way you can sort of hedge your bets. But my opinion has been that the better stuff happens a little bit later on in the sales, and that in the end, like, the basic stuff that is available, like anything that doesn't have a time-sensitive side, there's literally no incentive to buy except on the last day of the sale. Like, in the worst-case scenario, if they don't discount anything lower, you can just buy on the last day of the sale, and you at least aren't giving up a potentially better discount. I definitely think Dark Souls 2 is going to go on some kind of a flash sale or daily deal. But I also think, like, if you think about it, the really desirable stuff, like, they want to put at least a couple of desirable titles on the first day so that people notice. And then, like, if I was selling Scholar of the First Sin, that's the first time there's been a substantial discount to that game. So I'd want to sit on the new price for a couple of days, and basically everybody who's kind of like, really, that's as low as it's going to get, $27 is okay, and then lower it to a flash sale price. Now, the thing that's going to change this is the fact that you can do refunds now. But I believe the pricing is done sort of between Valve and the company. So it's, there's no way of really knowing whether or not their pricing strategies have incorporated the fact that there are refunds. But yeah, I'll agree with you, Red Pain. Like, it feels like the super discounts are harder to find now. I actually had a couple of giveaways that I was going to do, and then the Steam sale happened. So I think what I'll do is I'll wait until the Steam sale is done before I do any other giveaways, just because in the end, like right now, people are going to be buying a lot more games, and it probably doesn't mean, like, if you can give away a game that's normally like $60, that means a lot. And then if that game is like on for $10, then people are kind of like, okay, that's not as impressive. So. Yeah, I agree, Red Pain. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I agree for the most part. But the big thing is, like, we're really 2 days into the sale now. So I have bought a couple of things myself. Actually, so your guys' recommendation of Homeworld, I did pick up Homeworld. Keep in mind I can't stream it because it's a PC-only title. But it's one that you guys made enough of a case for that I was kind of willing to make a blind purchase on that. I got Crypt of the Necrodancer, which, my goodness, that is a lot of fun. Actually, I believe that is going to be on sale, on a flash sale for the next 5 minutes. So if you were looking for an excuse to pick up Crypt of the Necrodancer, now is the time to get it. What else? There was another game that I got. Oh, Wasteland 2, another recommendation from the stream. Hallex1316, thank you very much for the host. You guys are driving me crazy again. So we had Superior Blaze, before I started talking, was hosting me, and now we've got Hallex1316. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you're in chat yet. I know I always run into the problem whenever I host somebody, the ads always cover over the thank you. So, Hallex, if you're here, thank you. If you're not here, I will try to give you proper credit. You bought 10 random keys on G2A, and they open random key packs. Best game you got with Victoria 2. Oh, that's cool. I actually picked up Victoria 2 in a Humble Bundle. And I've started to play it twice, and then I just turned it off, because I'm like, you know what? Too complicated. I don't want to deal with this crap right now. I'm going to learn Europa Universalis 4 first. Yeah, see, I'm running out of money. I really wanted to send... Okay, you know what? I'm going to send these mercenaries crashing into... Have I played Anno 2070? I have not. I haven't even seen a trailer for it, actually. Is it one that you'd recommend? Yes, I could help my allies, but screw them. Okay, now I actually got to do something about that. All the Anno games are amazing. So what's the deal with Anno 2070? What is their claim to fame? Hello, 16,000. All right, well, looks like we've just bankrolled our next war against the Abbasids. So, what I particularly want to do here, so they're broke. What I want to do in this particular situation is attack the holdings that the Abbasids, like, that this individual personally has. This is going to make my war score go up faster, and it's also going to hit him the hardest in his troop size. So we can take Damascus. Ascalon. I mean, Damascus is best because it's the capital, but I have a feeling I'm probably not close enough. Let's just see what I can... Oh. Ah. Units in enemy provinces, so I gotta move these guys pronto. Exactly, Limmel. It can be played multiplayer or single player. There's a lot to explain, but it's one of my favorite games. Well, you know, honestly, it sounds like a Paradox title. And actually, as Limmel is pointing out, I don't know if you got to hear my original thank you for the host, but I know I was explaining that, especially like when I host something like Alaskan Savage or that, it really seems like the Twitch ads have like a 30%, 40% rate of breaking the player or like taking longer than they should. Pringles ads are the worst, but both for content and the fact that they slow down the player. So normally I don't actually get to hear whether or not somebody says thank you for the host, but it's definitely appreciated. And it's a smaller scale economic industry RTS. So this is actually something that really interests me. I like RTSs, but I always get really discouraged when they're reduced to this, like, click-heavy sort of, just very, I'm not as interested in RTSs that seem very mechanics-heavy. And this is rich coming from somebody who loves Dota 2, right? I get it. But it's one thing that's kind of kept me from enjoying the RTS genre as much as I could. So the idea of an RTS that has a certain degree of complexity to it is definitely something that's piqued my interest. All you see on is a few AAA games, and then it's just crappy indie games that you can't see dropping anything without asking someone you trust before buying. Yeah, I mean, technically this is a problem that exists on the Steam store independent of a sale. Yeah, I mean, my estimation is that the days of like the insane deals are behind us. That they're going to be just as a whole, they're going to be a little bit more quote unquote reasonable. It doesn't mean that there aren't going to be good values, but again, I mean, the thing for me is that that's kind of what Twitch is about for me. So a really good example is Gods Will Be Watching is one of those flash deals that got unlocked through their game right now. If you like adventure style games, if you like good stories, definitely check out Gods Will Be Watching. And my hope would be that if anybody, is on the fence about purchasing that title, that they would be able to go and watch the YouTube videos of the playthroughs and make an informed decision as to whether or not the game's for them. So Twitch has kind of become my buying guide for the Steam sales. Like another example here would be Massive Chalice, which I'm kind of on the fence about, but Ewok Fuzzy Nuts had nice things to say about, so I'm now inclined to consider purchasing. Again, I'm losing troops here, but the cost of the troops is going to fall when they die, so I'm not that worried. Duke Ildwine is a rebel and a traitor. The false sweep words of the false pope have swayed him. Okay. Alright, so we're outnumbered there, and that's... Let's see when they arrive. They arrive November 17th, and I am out. They're out on November 23rd, so that's a problem. I think I'm just going to disband them right now, and I raise my own troops. which is a little bit of a bummer because they're going to be able to lay siege to some of these provinces. But I'm committed to, like, at this point, I've got the numbers to support my invasion. So it's a bit of temporary pain for a long-term benefit. I guess I could technically hire another band of mercenaries, but that just seems like a really good way to blow $450. The big thing is that I believe that 14 stack is yeah, that's almost half of his forces, so being able to kill that is going to be fantastic. Bought it last Christmas and put nearly 100 hours into it in the first month. Good lord. Many sleepless nights managing my island's industrial growth. And you remember the days of Steam sales where you could buy $75 games for $25. Yep. And again, I think I've gotten into a little bit of a problem in the fact that I've tried to show the other side of the story a few times when it comes to developer things. So I think I'm starting to sound a little bit too pro-business when I talk about these things. But I think in some ways this is the system working. I think for a while we as consumers have been able to enjoy a little bit. Like we've been able to enjoy a lot of games somewhat at the developer's expense. I mean, in the end, the cost of producing another key is costless. So, like, it's not like the developers are not directly being harmed by having these super cheap games. But like the big thing is that there are now people who don't want to, buy these AAA titles right away because they, they're pretty sure they're going to get a deal on them later on. Now, again, I think it's good because there's a certain amount of price discrimination that's going on. The people who have to have the game right away are paying it. They're sort of financing these AAA games that I can get. I don't really see myself spending $75 on a game personally. And part of that's my financial circumstances, and part of that's just, where... Like, there's a lot of really good indies that don't cost $75, but generally are more entertaining to me. So I can't quite justify the valuation most of the time. But with that in mind, like, I think with a lot of these sales, people have gotten these expectations of lower prices than the market can really bear. And so I think we're just sort of seeing the reaction. In the end, I still think we're getting value out of these sales. It's just that we're not getting the, like, obviously amazing deal like we used to. And it's disappointing, but I sort of understand why it is the way that it is. In the end, if we don't give a fair price for these products, we're not going to get them anymore. But definitely Steam sales are not quite what they used to be. I'd like to look into Fallen Enchantress Legendary Heroes, but you don't see much on it, and what little you've seen are mixed reviews. Yeah, it's always hard when you see mixed reviews, because sometimes those are really good games. Like, obviously, Crusader Kings 2 is going to have a really polarized opinion on it, but I think it's generally a good game. But, it doesn't always mean that... Like, mixed can also mean that it's generally not a good... Like, Amazon, like, anything that's, like, 3 stars or less, is basically garbage. It's like having a 1-star review. And hey, T. Clark, how's it going? Leofwin is slow to learn to talk. I can encourage by example. I can birch the words from her mouth. I can let her take her time, or send her to the nannies instead. Let's go for... 10% chance of stutter, 5% chance of stutter. Let's let... Oh wait, it's 50% chance of gaining stutter. Don't want that. Yeah, let's encourage by example. Laufwin has become trusting. This may not be the most beneficial for her in the long run. Well, she's not going to become king, so... Like to hear my thoughts on early access and pre... Oh, sorry. There are a few games that you'll buy at full price, but to be completely honest, Fallout 4 you'll probably get at full price, but only because you enjoy the other Bethesda titles. Yeah, like, the same deal for me. I've more or less bought Civilization titles at cost because they're games that have always been a really big part of my gaming experience. I've always enjoyed them when they've come out, and I do include Beyond Earth in that. I'm not going to say it's better than Civilization 5, but I actually... enjoyed playing I enjoyed playing it you know, for whatever, you know, for what however much that's worth. I think I'll just take these boats and so yeah, I mean, like, I think the idea here is, you know, you get the stuff that's, like, really important to you at the full cost. But, like, especially with so many games out there and things like Humble Bundles and that, like, it's really hard to justify buying the latest game every single time it gets released because, like, when are you going to find the time to play all of it? So it's why, like, I'm lucky in that the indies that I played have usually been very good. So they're fairly low cost titles. They're really enjoyable, and as long as I have a fairly good stable of those, you know, I don't have as much of a pressing need to buy some of the costlier titles. So, and then next, you'd like to hear my thoughts on early access pre-orders. I see almost no reason ever to pre-order a game. I think, you know, they will incentivize pre-ordering with, you know, some little bit of extra content. Generally, I think the... You know, I think the benefits that you get from whatever, you know, DLC that, you know, comes with a pre-order is quite small compared to locking yourself into a particular game, you know, before you've really been able to form an opinion. Now, one thing I will say is there's a lot of people who will say, you know, oh yeah, you should never pre-order. And then they go out and they buy the game the day that it comes out without reading reviews. At that point, I'm kind of like, well, you know, why not pre-order? At least you get something extra out of it, right? In some senses, you can say there's a bit of a moral hazard problem with pre-ordering, right? Like, if you're developing a game, let's say that it's not feature complete, and you know that you've pretty much captured the majority of the market for your game, then there's a question, you know, how much money are you actually going to spend improving this game? Now, that's not the most convincing argument, because, you know, presumably if you're a company that makes games, you want to continue making games. And so if you start spending your reputation so freely, you know, if you just kind of take everybody's money in pre-orders and then, you know, run off, you know, people are not idiots. They're gonna figure out what's happening, and you're going to be hurting for that. I think at this point I'm just gonna drop these troops. I'm gonna spend more money waiting for them. But yeah, so it's like, you know, if you're on the fence about a game and you want to know, if you're on the fence about a game and you want to know whether or not it's worth buying, then definitely there's no reason why you should pre-order it. And I don't think people do pre-order in that situation. I think there are people who desperately want a title and they want that title to be good, and that's where the complaints about pre-ordering come in. Now, ordering it on the first day is not going to solve that problem. Checking the reviews and, you know, sort of doing some work on your own account, checking the Twitch streams, checking the reviewers, you know, getting opinions that you trust are the way to go there. Now, I mean, again, the return system is actually fairly good in this case. If you've played less than 2 hours, like if you've played the new Assassin's Creed game and you're like, honestly, this thing is not as fun as I thought it was going to be, as long as you haven't put 2 hours in, then you can just return it. Oh man, I'm losing a lot of I'm losing track of chat, so I still need to get onto early access as well, because I have a lot of opinions about that. I will just read the obituary. Emperor Wunderbar rests in the arms of the Lord at age 60. He died a natural death. Long live Emperor Macus. So first thing we're going to do is re-invite the Welcome the Jews. We'll set an ambition. Probably should be to have a son. And spending technology, definitely Majesty first, and then what is Keeps going to give me? Fortifications might be nice. A fair seems to be something that might earn some... Oh, well, my city tax goes up too, so that's a no-brainer. I should also... Yeah, I definitely need to reorganize my council as well. Yeah, pre-order was definitely a time before digital media. Like, if you were worried about not having enough copies of a game, absolutely. And then, I mean, a lot of the problems that people run into in terms of doing pre-orders, you know, those existed, but that was just the nature of buying games, right? Like, if you go into a store and they have, like, we don't accept returns on open software, you know, in the end, you're going to wind up, you know, you're going to get some lemons, right? It's not a perfect system. As, you know, as Red Pain's basically saying, the idea of pre-ordering now, I think, is a little... I mean, again, unless you see a benefit to getting... Like, you know that you want the game, if it's something like Civilization or something that, you know, to your mind has kind of established this good... this good track record with gamers, there's very few reasons to do a pre-order. No problem. I love talking about this stuff, Alex. It's better than me just, you know, throwing out opinions on, you know, stuff that I find interesting but nobody else does. You know what? I need to I need to be a little smarter than that for my council. Now, early access. I was not at all happy with the way Starbound wound up. Starbound, to me, and I mean, I realize they're making some efforts to make the game better. I think they're really, really, really late in those efforts. But, I mean, I guess credit to them for trying. But to me, Starbound pretty much is the poster child of, like, raking in a ton of money on the promise of a game and then just not delivering. You know, and it also, I think it's actually also affecting the way that games are getting developed. So I'm really interested in Satellite Rain, but I think it's very obvious that they put a lot of work into the visual style of that game right away, because that is what sells. So honestly, I think early access has all the wrong incentives. I think it's giving people... I know the intention is to give people the money to make the game, but it seems to me like the consequence of this system has been a lot of people are buying the potential of a game, and then the developers are turning around and failing to deliver. And sometimes that is a conscious effort of people to, you know, commit to things they know they can't deliver. I think sometimes it's creating situations where developers are promising more than they can actually deliver just because that's sort of the way this game is working. You know, it's not like every case is deliberate wrongdoing. But just generally, I think, like, early access is being used by a lot of people who probably shouldn't be spending that money on the game. It's like Kickstarter. So I actually kickstarted the Neil Stephenson project, the Clang one, and a lot of people kind of point that out as being one of the really awful examples. Now the thing is that they were selling a proof of concept, you know, alpha. That's what they delivered. It wasn't very good, and they couldn't get any further financing for the project, so it basically died. Now that's a risk that I took by supporting that project. I'm slightly irritated I cannot put them on this ship. Alright. Screw it. We're going to the Holy Land. So, like, to me, the money that I put towards Clang, you know, did I want to see the game turn out well? Yeah. I mean, I thought it was a really interesting idea. I like Neil Stephenson's books. And, you know, I think it would have been really interesting to have something like that take off and see what could result. Hey, Kite, how's it going? Now, there's a lot of people who are demanding refunds, and apparently some people got them, which I was very surprised by. I don't actually think the people asking for those refunds were entitled to them, because they signed up for this, this venture, which had the possibility of failing. And ultimately, they were given what they had asked for. Now, there were... I will also say, in the defense of the people who are, you know, who are asking for refunds, that wasn't the experience of everybody. There were some people who apparently were promised some incentives that ultimately weren't delivered. So, in that case, there's obviously a legitimate complaint. But the big thing of it's like, okay, you know, the game didn't get finished. I'm angry now. I think misses the point of Kickstarter. Like, Kickstarter is to make these projects which may or may not work, to let them have their chance. And so I think people shouldn't be backing these kinds of things if they... Like, it's... To my mind, people are using this... They're using it a lot as a... like, just a fancy pre-order system. And I think that's... like, it's not fair to the developers, and I think it's creating unrealistic expectations. Like, basically, everybody's winding up disappointed with the system because... the developers are being held to a standard that I think they can legitimately say they shouldn't be expected to meet. and then the people giving the money are getting disappointed because they're not getting what they perceive to be the point of the initiative. I'm doing okay, Kite. I think I'm failing to make the case against early access and pre-ordering. um, well, before I continue, I'll read a couple of things that that came up. Limmel, I am a little interested in them. Probably RimWorld more than Prison Architect. But again, I've got so many games to play that I haven't put too much serious thought into either of them. Okay, so we're talking about mixed reviews. So, what kind of mixed reviews are we talking about? Because in my mind, there are two distinct types of mixed reviews. The kind where most everybody has very middle-of-the-road feelings about it, and there is a consensus that basically says it's not a bad game per se, but there isn't anything particularly good or noteworthy about it. Yeah, and in my opinion, that's basically a bad review, because there's a lot of exceptional games out there that, like, honestly, I do not have the time for mediocrity. I realize that sounds extremely entitled, and it probably is, but I'm lucky to have, so many good indie developers developing really interesting games at low cost that I really don't want to play a mediocre game. Two, that there's the kind which are very polarized. Half of the people are like one out of 10 worst game ever, the other half are 10 out of 10 best game ever. Both are basically useless in the decision-making process. See, I would actually say the polarized example, as long as you have, like, to me, the important thing is to consider the sources. So I think Maddox has this example where it's like, if Roger Ebert gives a negative review to Army of Darkness, to ignore it, because Army of Darkness is not the kind of film that Roger Ebert, likes or has established any kind of credential for. But if Roger Ebert turns around and says, I don't know, 12 Years a Slave, 1 out of 10, worst slavery movie ever, then you're kind of like, oh, okay, you know what? I heard good things, but if Ebert didn't like it, maybe it's really overrated. I've seen Army of Darkness. I don't got no time for them fancy movies. I don't know. I don't know good examples of a case where, there was a critically acclaimed movie that Ebert wound up saying, actually, this thing isn't as good as everybody's making it out to be. I'm sure there must be an example, but I don't have a ready one. I'm kind of getting off the point, though. But yeah, so I mean, in my opinion, as long as you have one of those, trusted sources for yourself, I think the polarized reviews can be good, because, again, like, Crusader Kings 2 is not going to appeal to everyone, and so I can imagine there being, I can see what the review would look like, in my mind, right? It's like, 1 out of 10, this game is for people who think they're so smart, it's it's needlessly complicated, it doesn't give you enough information to figure out what's going on. There's lots of criticisms that you can make in this game. All of that, by the way, would be completely fair, but it's missing the fact that it's actually a very rich and engaging experience as long as you're sort of willing to spend the time with it. So in that case, you look at the content of the reviews, you consider, is the criticism that they're raising legitimate, or do they seem to have, quote unquote, missed the point? Do they seem to have, is there may be something else going behind this review that's causing them to be unfair? I forgot to sort out my titles properly, so I'll get through the chat stuff and then I'll go to managing. But the second kind of review I personally find a little bit more useful. Although again, that's usually the point where I'll check out. It's usually the point where I'll check out like either people playing it on Twitch, or I'll ask people who tend to be those early adopters. A good example actually was I read a lot about how awful The Order was because it was so short. So immediately at that point, I'm like, I'm not interested in that criticism at all. You know, I've played a lot of games which were short and by my standards, but were extremely enjoyable. And I think visually it's a very impressive game. Now, then I started reading some other criticisms which were like, you know, there seemed to be a lot of, quick time events, which isn't that interesting. The game's visually appealing, but the story isn't quite there. Like, these are some things that I couldn't judge without seeing the game played. I mean, again, I thought it was gorgeous to look at, so I got that out of it. Now, if I'm looking for like gorgeous games, I could also look at Bloodborne. So that's not, it's not the last word on that particular title, but it's an example of kind of this this review process. So I don't know whether or not The Order counts as mixed review or just outright negative review, but that's an example where I look at the content of the review and I say, well, this isn't, to me, this isn't a valuable measure of this kind of a title. So that's one thing that I keep in mind for the more polarized reviews. So we go. Look at it like this for all of you that didn't live in the time of dial-up internet, Fallout 4, and you want it near the launch date. The pre-order was a good thing. Developers did a lot better. To measure. Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the reason why you're seeing more, like DLC and stuff like that being bundled is that people realize that with cheap and increasingly fast broadband, there are less reasons to, and of course digital distribution, there are fewer reasons to pre-order. And so they need to provide some incentive in order to make people do it. And again, honestly, if you're not going to bother with any reviews on this game, if you're going to order it, or if you're going to buy it the day that it comes out, why not get the extra stuff, right? But, you know what? I said I was going to organize my titles. But, if on the other hand you're on the fence, you think it's possible that the game may not be very good, it might be buggy, if there's something that suggests to you that you may not, there's any positive probability that this may not be the game that you're expecting, why take the risk? Like, and again, for me especially, because there's just so much that's really good out there that I haven't played yet. Which again, to the to Red Pain's point, that maybe isn't necessarily the case in those days, because once upon a time it was only large studios really making games that you would ever hear about, right? Like the cheap studios were making like knockoffs of major titles that the only people really buying them were like grandparents who didn't understand gaming but wanted to get a game for the kids, and they're like, what, I'm not spending $60 on Deus Ex, like, oh, this one looks sci-fi, I'll get $15, and it's obviously not where it should be. So digital distribution and the increase of engines like the free Unreal Engine, and then of course Unity and Game Maker, we have more games overall. They're generally better quality, and you can have access to them. And so, I mean, first of all, the demand side has been taken care of. You don't need to worry about not having enough copies. But then on the flip side too, is you have more alternatives to the latest title being released. Like if the new Call of Duty isn't that fun, if you like games, like in and of themselves, right? Not like if you just like gaming, it's not that you have to play the latest FPS every single time. then you just have so many other alternatives. So why would you pre-order? So early access is sound in theory, but horribly flawed in practice. I agree. It's like Kickstarter. You really shouldn't be putting money into something unless it's something you are willing to lose money on. And once you do, you should just consider that money thrown into the void, never to be seen or heard from again. Consider it burnt money. Then when it's bust, you're not completely bummed out. If something good comes up, it's like, oh, it's Christmas today. So, I mean, I in the broadest strokes agree with you completely, T. Clark, and I think you said what I was trying to earlier a lot better. The one thing I will say, like, when I go onto Kickstarters and things like that, every dollar that I ever put towards a Kickstarter comes with basically the idea that this is effectively a donation towards a project that I want to see completed. I treat it a little bit like I'm making an investment, and so I will make some judgments in terms of the quality of the people who are doing this. So, like, I remember there was like one Kickstarter that I saw where people are like, yeah, we're going to remake Battletoads. And, it's not going to matter about copyright because we're going to give away the game for free. And I'm like, okay, tell you what, take your favorite musician, copy their CD. Yeah, well, I mean, album. Nobody gets CDs anymore. Give it away for free and see whether or not they have some opinions about whether or not that constitutes copyright infringement. Like, you clearly have not done your homework about what's required to remake Battletoads. And like their list of costs was ridiculous. It's like getting them a full license for Photoshop, full license for like the enterprise edition of Visual C++, and like Visual Studio, a full Unity license. I'm like, you said you wanted to make this 2D. Like, what exactly is in the full? This is before like the full Unity engine was available. This is like Unity 4, I guess. What possible reason do you need access to the full, the full engine? So, and I mean, that's a cartoon example, really. Like, nobody in their right mind would back that Kickstarter. But again, like, the idea here is do due diligence. Like, treat it as if you were going to be getting a part of the revenue of this game. You're looking for something that you want to see made, and you are giving them the money to complete this project. But like an investor, you recognize that there's no guarantees once you give them that money. As was the case with my Clang experience. I think there are things that they could have done to make the project a little more successful. But just in the end, like, I accept that it didn't turn out. I am disappointed, and I think they didn't use the money as well as they could have. But in the end, I don't feel there were any reasonable grounds for asking for a refund. I think they delivered what they had promised. I'll just give this duchy to my brother. Now, early access is a little more difficult because, like, so the biggest problem I have with Kickstarter is people treating it as this, like, new form of pre-order. Early access is a little bit tougher because it's being sold on Steam. Like, Steam's really clear on, and, there's always the disclaimers saying we're not quite sure where this project is going and so on and so forth. But I don't know, it seems like people are still buying these games not realizing that they could still possibly fail. I'm really interested that good developers don't necessarily need early access. So a good example of this would be Harebrained Schemes with their Shadowrun games. They've never needed to do early access. They have used Kickstarter, and I think they've used Kickstarter extremely well. I think they're a very consumer-focused company, and I think they deserve a lot of credit for the way that they've done their titles. Um, Now, again, like the problem that I have with early access is that games are basically being sold on their. It's the same as Kickstarter. Games are being sold on their potential, and then there isn't any kind of accountability for them completing it. And the big thing for me is I'm just not quite sure how you do that, because I know Clay has been pretty clear in saying that they like the feedback that they get. I think, in fact, a lot of developers keep talking about how the early access period is a benefit to their game. Now, personally, I find I get burned out on a lot of early access games that I play, so I generally avoid it just because I want to enjoy the games that I play. But I guess the one thing that I sort of need to say, as opposed to pre-orders, where I think it's just generally foolish for people to get involved in, I think early access, in the end, like, people need to just start taking a bit more responsibility for what they're signing up for. Like, if you're, like, again, I'm mad at the way Starbound turned out. And I think they treated that title I think they treated the people who pre-ordered / early access that game, I think they treated them very poorly, because they put in these dates which, they didn't fulfill, and it sort of seemed like they stopped developing it for a really long time after they kind of hit their saturation point. But in the end, I sort of need to say, it's like, well, you know what, you voluntarily gave them the money, right? You bought this promise of what a game was going to be, and they, once they got the money, they didn't have any reason to continue developing it. I mean, again, I know they're still doing updates, but let's face it, that game has been in early access for a really long time. So yeah, in my case, unless it's something, I think Amplitude does early access well. Don't always buy what they do in early access, but I'm willing to give them, a little bit more weight. But generally, I mean, the biggest thing for me is there's a lot of games that are complete, are fun to play, and are available at reasonable prices. Oh, sorry, another example, Kerbal Space Program and Besiege. Those are another couple of early access games that I've really enjoyed, and I think are going about it the right way. Obviously, Kerbal has been since released, but I think in the end, early access is a bit more of an individual decision. I'm not crazy about it. I don't necessarily see a lot of reason to... I don't see a lot of reason to put some restriction on it. I think Valve oversells it. They, like, if you go on their original early access display, yeah, I've pretty much stopped playing Crusader Kings for a little bit, so I'll maybe, like, go on my break, and then we'll come back and finish off this war. Oh, Darkest Dungeon, yes, that's another good example of a good early access game. So yeah, Red Pain, you're batting a thing. I don't even know what the proper measure for batting is, because I don't watch baseball. You're 100% on your early access games. The original page I saw for early access was Valve talking about, this is the way we think game development should be done, or something like that. And I'm like, this is nonsense. Where's the early access for Half-Life 3? Where's the early access for Left 4 Dead 3? Where's the early access for any Valve title? It doesn't happen. But Valve is much more interested in making money than making games. So, they're obviously going to sell the early access because it's another avenue through which they can generate some revenues. But generally, honestly, I don't think, I think more people are buying early access than they should. And I think if I were to have my preference, I would prefer that a developer be able to do a Kickstarter, and that they only raise enough money to make the game as originally intended, and that I think the good Kickstarters are the one that raise the money to make the game. So if you look at the Kickstarter for Shadowrun, pretty much every penny of that seems to be going into the development of the game. They make the game bigger as the Kickstarter gets bigger. The problem I have are the early access and the Kickstarter, where the revenues for the game are generated through these pre-sales, basically. Because at that point, then you say, it's like, well, you know, you don't need to make the game anymore, basically. Like, you've made the money, and so we've taken on 100% of the risk that you're going to follow through on your obligation. So, in that sense, the biggest ones that I like are Kickstarters where they're either clear about the date, or they say, you know, let's be honest here, we're going to give you a date, but expect this to change. You know, where the development teams are upfront about how the project is going, and that in the end that there is still a financial incentive for them to make the best game possible. So again, the money that is raised goes into the game, not just, you know, well, I'm going to put, you know, half of the amount that we raised into developing the game, and then the rest is, you know, is payment. And that's one of the problems that I have with Kickstarter, right? Is if you have a runaway success Kickstarter, like let's say you capture 90% of your market in this Kickstarter, you know, do you need to put every single dollar of that towards financing the project? Because at that point, you know, you're trying to win over the remaining 10% with your game. And then the revenue, you know, like the profits from the game aren't going to be that high. So you could argue that overly successful Kickstarters should, if in principle you're supposed to take all the money that's raised into the development of the project, it's something that could actually blow out your margins as a developer. But in general, basically, I think it would be better if we had a system where there's a Kickstarter that's generated, people get the money to create the game, and then the game is released complete, rather than people trying to, you know, to sell these games as they're being developed. Because again, that's where you get cases like Satellite Rain, where it seems like they put all of their effort into making a good looking game, and then on the back end they're actually putting the game parts in. Yeah, Starbound release. Yeah, so that game's two years overdue already. In your opinion, Hairbane is a prime example of how to do Kickstarter right. Agree, T. Clark. Just like Darkest Dungeon, another good one. Example of how to do early access right. They are solid examples that both avenues are solid in theory and can work. Unfortunately, they are exceptions that prove the rule, as early access and Kickstarter are flawed in practice. Let's consider. Yeah, I agree, Just Willem. I think consumers should be a lot less well, as I said earlier, right? That there are more people coming into these things than they should. But on the other hand, like there is a certain point where there are, I mean, how many open world crafting zombie survival games do you see in early access, right? There's a lot of games that are only being sold on popular concepts. And there is a certain point where I'm saying is like, you know, yes, in the end, let the buyer beware, but there are some people who are definitely trying to create this massive set of promises that they never intend to fulfill. So, I mean, again, like I've never asked for a refund on an early access or a Kickstarter, but the system's not really. I think there are better ways to run things. Or sorry, I believe that there are better ways to run things. I just don't know them personally. Welcome, by the way. Sorry I'm not too active in Crusader Kings, but we're in the system talk part of the broadcast. And Akadak, alas, you cannot stay for long. You're fatigued enough to sleep. Totally love the discussions in the gaming industry. Have a great stream and great night. Be well, everyone. Thank you very much, Akadak. I hope I wasn't talking so long I missed your message. Missed your presence, but have a great sleep, my friend. Okay, tell you what. I'm going to go on a quick break, 3 minutes or less. Enjoy the Crusader Kings music. We will do religions as a view. And then we'll be back to properly play the games. I'll still talk about early access and stuff like that, but I'll actually do stuff while talking about it. I've already sorted out my kingdom and things like that, so. See you guys in a minute. All right, thank you everybody for your patience. I also apologize for the... You put chat on timestamp just to see how long it is. Yeah, so Red Pain, I'm getting your message right now at 10:50. But I suspect you're not going to hear this for a while. So apologies, guys. It's now making sense to me. Like, I'm kind of reading some of these chat comments, and obviously there's no reason to, to say, it's like, yeah, I just said that, idiot. But, like, whenever I'm seeing some of these comments, I'm like, didn't I just say something like that? I mustn't have been very clear or something like that. So if it feels like I'm appropriating your ideas, I apologize. I am apparently contending with me responding to chat saying, or I'm contending with the fact that chat is responding to things that I've said minutes earlier. So, welcome to those of you who are new. I apologize for the delay. We'll do the best that we can with this. But I'm enjoying this conversation. It's a topic that I think about a lot. I'd like to actually address a couple of things that were said in chat. So, Red Pain's idea of an FDIC is really interesting because I believe the empirical work that has been done on deposit insurance. So obviously it's not FDIC in Canada, but I believe globally in the application of deposit insurance schemes actually leads to an increase in financial crises. Now, this doesn't mean that FDIC is bad. I actually think deposit insurance is a really good idea. But the consequence of it is that you actually see an increase in bank failures because, again, you have like moral hazard problems and things like that. So it's one of these cases where you need to be careful what you wish for. So, like, let's say that we did have something like game makers insurance. What you potentially do is you have people who are maybe less experienced in gaming or maybe want to take a flyer that, I'm going to, the sort of thing that we see right now, which is take these buzzwords and these really flashy ideas and we're going to see if we can make something that people get attracted on. And effectively what winds up happening is, the 1 in a million shot that it turns into a massive profit. I mean, again, then the developers are really happy. But then somebody else is absorbing those losses with that FDIC. So in that case, I actually think it's something that wouldn't necessarily apply as well in the gaming context as it does in the banking context. The thing about the banking context is that the losses we gain from an increased number of financial crises. The losses from the increased number of financial crises are smaller than the benefit from the bank runs that we avoid through federal deposit insurance. Oh, the summer monster game that you cannot play. It's, I wasn't that impressed by it. Actually, speaking of Steam sale, let me bring up Steam and let's take a look at what the new flash sales are. This is probably going to absolutely kill my frame rate, so... but it gives me a chance to talk about some of these early access issues. So one thing, so I was thinking a little bit about just Willem's comment in terms of consumers' responsibilities, and then what should be happening in terms of... Oh, neat. So, the Guild, which I've not played, don't know much about. Pac-Man DX, Mercenary Kings, Long Live the Queen, War for the North, which I got in a Humble Bundle, Sonic franchise, Kings of Amalur, looks interesting. Victoria Collection, so I suspect probably there's going to be some DLC for Victoria that you can pick up cheap. Wings of V, Clara gave me this game actually. This is a pretty fun but really difficult game. Haven't heard of OMSI, Last Remnant. Somebody was talking about this a little while ago actually. Minimum, which I, didn't really notice, but a few of my games have picked up. Somebody was talking about Fallen Enchantress, so now's your time to get it. $10.99. Salt, at half off. Never heard of it, but it's an early access open world adventure set on an island. Oh boy! And Battle of Brothers, another early access game. Turn-based strategy RPG mix, which has you leaving mercenary company in gritty, low-power medieval fantasy world. 20% off. So... and looks like we have to wait till tomorrow until we get a deal on Gods Will Be Watching. So on this discussion about early access and Kickstarters, I was just thinking, is like, what happens if you run a Kickstarter? You want to raise, let's say, $25,000 to make your indie game, and you wind up raising $1 million. You know, at what point do you say, you know, we're treating these as pre-orders and we're not adding any more functionality to the game? By the way, I would respect any Kickstarter that does that, because obviously once you start making $1 million game, you're potentially outgrowing your capacity to develop the best game that you can. I don't think most people will say we're we don't want to take your money anymore, though. That's definitely wishful thinking. I think one thing that would be kind of interesting is if you say at some point, it's like, okay, we stopped making it a Kickstarter and now we're turning this into early access, and you're buying this game to support us as we develop it. That might be kind of interesting, I suppose. Oh, okay, now we've got problems. Where are they heading? Safid and Irbid. So it's 13,000 heading there. I think the better call is to move my 12,000 troops in for safety. They arrive November 28th. They arrive just... Yeah, this is the best call. Okay, they're giving up. Last Remnant was a fantastic but really long RPG. You only looked at this at Steam like twice since the Steam sale started, and that was to look at downloads in your library. You haven't even looked at the sales. There's been a couple. I mean, I've picked some stuff up, but what I'm probably going to do on the last day is wind up buying a lot of Crusader Kings 2 like unit portraits or unit figures and portraits. Like, they're $1 each right now, so one of the things that I do is, like, when I pick up the DLC I was interested in, I add a couple of the portraits for regions I play a lot. Slowly the game's gonna start looking a little prettier over time. You have the Guild, War for the North, Reckoning, and Last Remnant. Yeah, by the way, if any of you guys who saw those titles, if you want to give some recommendations in terms of, I'm sure, I may not pick up any of those myself, but I'm sure people in chat would be very interested in hearing what like-minded individuals think of some of those titles. So please feel free to discuss which ones you think are worthy on there, because I personally am always interested in seeing some... in playing new games, playing interesting games. Okay, they arrive January 27th. We arrive... Oh, January 10th is too early. Hopefully we can end some of these sieges before disaster strikes. So it makes more sense to move these guys in now. But yeah, so the thing I'm thinking about is, like, what happens when a Kickstarter is so successful that it outgrows the scope of the project. Looks like they've given up. And I mean, I think personally, I think I would respect any developer that says, we need to, this has succeeded beyond our wildest dreams. We need to be honest with you. We are, from this point on, this is going to go towards, we're going to take some certain amount as revenues or something like that. I also don't know if that's permissible under Kickstarter, by the way. But I think that's a big problem with their system if they're forcing people to overexpand their titles, because like there's really no good way around that, right? Like if Kickstarter's not going to want you to stop raising money. They get paid based on a percentage of what you raise. But it's not like small scale games. Like not every game has to be a AAA title, is kind of where I'm trying to go with this. So after, in terms of early access, how would what do you do with that? What are some improvements you could possibly make? I really don't know how you get around the problem of, I don't know how you get around the problem of, like people, well, I mean, again, overly successful, like basically them turning into pre-orders that people don't, that they don't have a reason to develop anymore. I mean, in the end, there is some dude, I guess it just comes back down to backing the right horse, but then that also affects developers that are legitimately trying to do, the best that they can for their player base. I mean, I guess maybe a certain amount. This would actually be an interesting approach. So, what if doing early access, you only received a fraction of the amount that was committed in early access? That some of it was held in escrow, and that where the remaining money came from would be completing the game. So what this does, basically the game developer is a business. If you've got this amount that's guaranteed when you release the finished product, then you can borrow against that, right? You have a credible source of funding. Now, I mean, there's still problems with that. Effectively, what happens in that situation is that you create this incentive to release the game. Like, if the sales dry up and, you've got this loan that needs to be repaid and you don't have any other source of funds, the game gets released in its incomplete state. But then that at least puts some closure on it, right? And at that point, the game rises or falls based on the product that you can deliver. But I need to think a little bit about how that would work. You tried Last Remnant, love the visual style, but the direction wasn't very clear, not to mention that you tried it 6 years ago. Honestly, it's the first I've heard of that game. I think I'll just wait until this siege is done before I move these guys in. It's a really risky play, though. Yeah, they arrive on the exact day. You know what? Let's go for it. Let's see if they back down. Yep, they did. So they're heading to Irbid, and they arrive on March the 8th. So one of the things that I can actually take advantage of, it looks like the AI is pretty indecisive on this one, so as long as I create a credible threat in each of these areas, it looks like these 13,000 troops are just going to be paralyzed. So they'll arrive on February 16th, way too early. That's a lot of prisoners. Oh, is everything frozen on stream? Looks like I just lost... My viewer count just got guillotined, so I suspect there was some interruption in service. Sorry, guys. One thing I will mention... Oh, your biggest issue with Kickstarter is the sheer lack of transparency. Even if you did have the money, you wouldn't back any Kickstarter that didn't have two things. A roadmap, this is a current development schedule, and this is when things will be done. This may change if issues arise. I agree completely. A breakdown of how the money will be used. I think that should be required of every Kickstarter. if you back a project, you want to know where the money they make will be going. Yep, I agree. I don't know why that isn't a requirement of Kickstarters right now, to be honest. I mean, again, it does come back down to, you know, let the buyer beware. Like, it is in the end the backer's responsibility to do their due diligence. But I'm frankly not. I'm not really interested in these fly-by-night Kickstarters that are going to I don't know, like they're gonna promise the moon but not actually give any credible plan in terms of where the development will go. The only Kickstarter you've ever considered backing was Project Phoenix, which I backed myself. They're actually really far behind, but they've at least been okay in terms of communicating their delays. And that's because the art is so gorgeous. You're a fine artist yourself, so you can really appreciate the content work. Alex, if you'd ever like to share some of your art, I don't know a good way to show the art. I guess I just, you know, get it somewhere else and then show it on stream. But if you'd ever like to share that, or I mean, just give a link to people, feel free to share out your art. I think we can always benefit from having nicer things to look at. And more importantly, it's good to support people who do stuff like that, because I wish I was a better artist than I am, but unfortunately I need to deal with my natural talents or lack thereof. Well then. These guys hate me. But yeah, I mean, I think everybody wants to see independent developers get more money for their games. Everybody wants to see games that wouldn't already otherwise have been made get made because of something like Kickstarter or these other forms of financing. Unfortunately, there isn't. News has reached court that a claimant to one of my titles, Alim, is hiring men for an attack against me. Don't mind dropping links if I'm not opposed to it. They're on Imgur. No, please. There's no. I don't have any rules against links. I honestly, there are people who've come in promoting their streams with giveaways, and I'm like, well, if you know, I encourage you guys to go get the giveaway and then just come back. The only thing you're even remotely good at is writing poems. Beyond that, you're pretty rubbish at just about everything. T. Clark, you're definitely in my camp then. Although I can't write poetry. So I'll have two questions for you. Do you have a favorite poet? I know classics, both literally classics and also older style poets, better than modern. I have a good friend who is a poet, who I don't talk to as often as I should, but he's a good guy. And if you'd like to share, you too. Feel free. I mean, anybody can post a link at any time. I trust your judgment enough that you're not going to do anything untoward, and obviously if it becomes a problem, I will be clear in whatever rules I impose later. So yeah, feel free to click the links. I personally will not be clicking on any of those. I'll look at the previews, but I won't click on the link because that's going to, again, cause frame drop issues. But I definitely save the chat, and I'll definitely review them when I have full access to the internet. As you guys saw when I loaded the Steam page, it took a really long time. So my preview is tiny. But those are looking really interesting, Alex. I apologize for this because I really want to see them, but I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to see them in their full glory after the stream. I think we're making money during... Yes, we are. So during this campaign against the Abbasids, we're actually turning a profit. Kite, thank you so much for the tweet out. And for those of you who haven't already, please check out Halex's art. Let him know. Well, please be constructive if it's not your thing. But let him know what you think. I'm sure. I will say, I may not be particularly gifted in a number of artistic endeavors, but I've always valued somebody taking the time to look at it and offering some kind of commentary. So I hope I'm not projecting, but I think Halex would appreciate the same. And he can let you know in chat if he feels otherwise. I liked the postage stamp that I saw. Superior Blaze. Alright, so they're arriving in Man. I still think the best way to do this is just scare them off. So they arrive June 3rd and 5th. This is going to be a bit late, but I think we'll still do well. Okay, so July 7th. Way too early. The problem is these are starting to get whittled down in terms of size just because of the attrition from war, so I need to be a little careful. I think in the end I'm not going to have any... I don't think I'm going to have anything that great to contribute as far as early access and pre-orders. It's a topic I like talking about. I think, honestly, the best way to handle it is to keep talking about how the system is currently working. Because at that point, that is when the consumers become informed, again, as to just Willem's point, which is, it is ultimately up to the consumer to be careful in terms of what they're supporting and how much faith they're putting in the developers. And I think in the end, talking with each other in terms of what our expectations are about games are what will prevent, audiences from expecting too much from their Kickstarters, from it'll prevent developers from promising too much. And in the end, it's going to be that level of education that we need to get these things, I guess, these things working a little bit more like they were intended to. The reason I'm not moving these troops right away is I want to waste as much time as they can in one region before I commit troops, because that's going to be time that I can't run a siege. The nice thing is as long as I don't actually move between the regions, I'm going to continue the siege, and so I get some advantage that way. But again, it's a little tricky. Okay, so this is a good example of one where they're going to arrive relatively late, so I need to commit them right away. And they arrive September 30th. They'll arrive September 15th, so I can sort of wait out this siege. basically the movement of the troops is sufficient to inspire them to retreat. I guess I should be reading those messages, but... Yeah, or more precisely, how the system is not working. You love making fantasy-oriented work. That's good. Yeah, and thank you guys for checking that out. It's not just for my entertainment. The problem with that is a large group is as dumb as rocks, and when they hear that, they just say, shut up and take my money. Yeah, that's true. I mean, on the other hand, though, like, this is the big thing. Like, in the end, I am definitely a product of my economics education. So in the end, I'll probably put a little bit more on the, there's a certain responsibility on the consumer to know what they're getting into and so on and so forth. But I don't like seeing people being taken advantage of. I'll say, here's the biggest thing. It's like, let's say we can completely divide the gaming population into, us elites who are capable of discerning what games are good and what games are bad, and this, majority of mouth-breathing idiots who will just back the stupidest games in the world. At some point, we need to say, where are we being hurt? I'm going to have more crappy games on Steam that I'm not interested in playing. That's fine. There's a lot of games I'm not interested in playing on Steam. I'm still going to be able to back Shadowrun games. I'm going to be able to check out reviews of games when they come out and make my judgments in terms of what I want. And, if the mouth breathers want to back games that are terrible, who am I to tell them they're not allowed to do that, right? In the end, I think they are, I think deep down these people are legitimately disappointed, and that at some point, we should have some expectations in terms of how some things are communicated to the audience. So I'm, in practice, I'm probably a little bit more moderate. But the biggest thing that I need to recognize in any discussion about this is like, okay, I may not like the fact that there are 100 billion open world zombie crafting survival games, but so what? Like, I'm not buying them. If somebody wants to buy that, who am I to say you're not allowed to? It's not like, somebody who's going to support a game like that's not necessarily a dollar that's going to go towards a Shadowrun game, right? If they want that type of game, they're going to back that type of game. So, I mean, again, like, I obviously I'll talk about what I perceive as being difficulties, but I also need to acknowledge that it doesn't necessarily, like, it could be that the system is the best that we can expect, and that in the end, like, it just means that there's going to be a certain group of people who, to my mind, are going to be taken advantage of, but they seem perfectly happy with that status quo. So, how upset should I really get about it? But I don't know. I as much as I like to pretend I'm not, I don't quite think I can be that cold. That's their prerogative, Red Pain, if they have money to burn. Yeah, so T. Clark. Sorry, T. Clark. I'm gonna repeat what you're saying. If they have the money to burn, then let them. If they insist on rushing in and getting burned, let them. We can warn them. But beyond that, you just do it. Yeah, like I think the biggest thing I can say, the points that I agree with the most in terms of this discussion that we've had, in terms of something that is a legitimate area of reform that I think still could be improved on, is the fact that there are not a lot of guidelines in terms of saying what expectations are you creating and how will they be fulfilled. So I think it would be good, like, even if the thing is just printed out of sheer BS, like a requirement for an early access game should be a roadmap for development. if you're going to be a game developer, if you're going to appear on this storefront, you know, you need to show that you're serious enough that you've at least got some kind of an idea of what this game is going to look like 6 months from now. Will that necessarily help that much? No, because I mean, at that point, then I just say it's like, you know, we're going to have, you know, we're going to transition into an MMO, you know, 3 months from now. Like, clearly that's not going to happen. But at least this point here, like, there's something institutional that is saying it's like, in order to do early access, you know, the way that you do early access is to talk about how you are going to bring this project to completion, rather than just early access is opening up your storefront, seeing how many people you can bring in, and then decide that you're bored with the game after 3 years. That to me seems to be the better middle road, because it's presumably something that the developers should be doing anyway, right? Anybody who's actually has a financial stake in this project probably wants to have an idea of when they're going to be finished, when they stop spending money on it. And it, you know, it gives a little bit more information to consumers who may or may not be the mouth-breathing idiots. Although, again, I will also give... Like, I generally think consumers are a little bit smarter than we give people credit for. They usually disappoint me in that estimation, but I still like to believe it. I will say, though, I really do like the idea of keeping money in some kind of escrow until a game is taken out of early access. It's just that if the only way I would ever want to see that actually implemented would be as if somebody could get around the problem that it creates an incentive to release a game before it's finished. But I really like the idea of saying that you can't actually collect until you finished your game. Well, I mean, again, you can. Obviously, this is intended to fund development. So, what you do is you create a. You give them that, you give them the evidence that the money will be coming in, right? That you give them what they need in order to secure. It's effectively you turn it into a question of liquidity, right? So you're going to have the money coming in if you release the game, but you don't have the money right now, so you just get some facility like a credit line. But again, if there's sufficient financial pressure on the studio, then the game gets released too early, and the escrow situation creates an incentive to release an incomplete game. But then you have the questions like, well, is that not happening right now? Like, it kind of seems to me that it is. So I don't know, maybe that is a way to go. I don't have a lot of good diplomacy options. Like, I want higher stewardship and high I want high everything, but I don't have a lot of really good options that'll give high stewardship and high diplomacy. Thank you, Just Willem. I'm terrified to wonder which part you just agreed with. Wasn't there a few years back that took the money and spent it on things other than the game? There's plenty of cases like that. I do believe there is legal recourse in that case. I don't believe Kickstarter would. I don't believe Kickstarter would be the one to enforce that. But obviously, because you did a Kickstarter, it doesn't mean that you're suddenly above the law. Like, clearly, if you are raising money saying you're going to make a game, and you take that pile of money and you use it for something that's not a game, people are going to be justifiably upset and come after you for taking their money. Which is, again, a question that I have in terms of the, the hypothetical successful Kickstarter. Like, again, in the perfect world, you have infinite scaling, right? So you have a Kickstarter that raises $6 billion, and so you get a $6 billion game, when originally it was like a new form of Tetris. But clearly not every game can be scaled to a $6 billion level. So then you have this question. It's like, at what point, obviously the money's going to keep coming in. At what point are you allowed to say, it's like, listen, we've got everything that we need for development. There's only we can only polish the pixels to make them shine so much. I'm not quite sure how Kickstarter handles a project that's so successful they can't put the money to use, because then you have the situation where somebody's legitimately committing fraud, and then they say, well, they were allowed to go and buy fancy clothes, why am I not? So the time is now 1:25 CST. I have 11:25 Pacific. Kickstarter is very hands-off from what you've gathered. They're a facilitator, but beyond that, they don't want to have anything to do with the projects. And they shouldn't, right? It's like, think of it like the stock market, right? The SEC is much more concerned with regulation. And the... clearly the markets have guidelines. Like, it's not, it's not completely the Wild West, but it strikes me that the New York Stock Exchange is a lot more interesting on providing a functioning market, and then regulation is actually, regulation is the government's job, and so they leave that to enforce. So similarly, Kickstarter has created this marketplace in which people who have ideas can connect with financial capital, but it doesn't mean that they're at all good at enforcing it, right? Especially because once the Kickstarter is done, they've sent the money off. It's not like they have any special ability to initiate the refund. $6 billion game is buy EA and run it right. Yeah. I know this is such a tedious war to watch, but I really like this strategy just because I'm able to take so many provinces. Oh man, I won the war. So let's just keep in mind, we had a couple of $100 in the bank at the start of this war. We've now got over two. Oh, that's not true, actually. We got money in concessions from that war. But we made money in the course of that war. And we didn't actually really have to fight. Two-and-a-half minute delay. Cool. By the way, okay, one thing I'll say about Electronic Arts, I know they catch a lot of flack, and a lot of it is justified. They have still given us some good games, as a whole. So, like, this is... So, I might be reaching a little bit too far here. But as much as we want to complain about the practices of early access and pre-orders and things like that, obviously pre-orders are more of a large... a large company... the sort of policy that a large company will use, like EA. Like, in the end, we are kind of holding these independent developers to standards that we don't necessarily... we kind of usurped the title. We are kind of holding these developers to standards that maybe... like... These are kinds of behaviors that we've come to accept from companies like EA. Like, we don't buy some EA games. Like, for instance, I think SimCity games are generally kind of fun, but there's nothing about the latest SimCity that is suggested to me that I would ever want to buy it. Now, I mean, part of that comes from its initial problems on release, right? Like, maybe it's actually a very, maybe it's actually a very good game now, and I'm just sort of relying on this thing that I heard when it was first released. But, clearly, if we're looking for a company that there's no lost love for amongst gamers, it would be EA. And I think sometimes fairly, sometimes we're maybe being a little unkind. But, at what point are we making some expectations of independent developers that we've kind of accepted as just practice by larger companies? I believe EA publishes The Secret World, which I really liked. There's actually a few EA games that I have that I like. I like Dead Space. Dead Space was fun. So, I think inherently, like with any creative industry, there's going to be stuff that is not very good, and it is not because anybody didn't try hard enough. Like, people legitimately tried very hard, and it just, for whatever reason, did not turn out the way that anybody wanted. I'm desperately trying to get these guys home so I can manage my titles. Now, I mean, again, EA has also made some very questionable decisions in terms of their policies in the past, right? Like, I'm not entirely sure some of the business practices, especially regarding microtransactions, are necessarily the most consumer-friendly, and so I'm inherently going to be suspicious of those. Is it my job to tell EA how to run their company? No, I just buy or don't buy the game. Do I think Origin is a fantastic platform? I actually don't have any complaints, per se. I know Steam had the similar kinds of complaints when it first came out. I use Steam a lot more than I use Origin. But, like, in the end, I don't think EA to me is not the pinnacle of evil. They don't have max points in Renegade. I think, they're usually probably guilty of hurting themselves more than anything. But I think the most important thing to consider is a lot of these practices that we're complaining about when it comes to a lot of these things that we're complaining about when it comes to early access and that are potentially complaints that we could level at larger studios, but we don't seem to be doing. So, I guess food for thought more than a case. Watch, yeah, you've only been listening. Oh, hey! Italy became Burgundy all of a sudden. Both in color and in name. Interesting. I really don't know what to make of that. Alright. I need to get rid of these titles first. It'd be nice if I could take away the duchy, but clearly this is not going to happen. Actually, so I think I'm going to throw a little bit of money behind this assassination attempt because I would definitely benefit from assassinating the leader. Okay, it says not a commander. I didn't think I was a commander. Oh, you know what? It's probably my retinue. There I am. I'm assuming I can't ransom any of these because the... Oh. because the Abbasids are bankrupt. But I may be wrong. So what are their potential? Yeah, they're still over 100,000. So what I basically need to do is anytime one of the caliphs dies, I need to hit them hard. Even like calling a crusade or something like that. Like I need to keep those troop numbers from growing, or I'm gonna have problems. Yubi has been making a mess of things in the past year. I can agree with that. Notable exceptions of Child of Light and Valiant Hearts. I have not played Valiant Hearts yet, but I watched Seriously Clara play it, and I think that is a fantastic type of game. EA gets a lot of bad press, but when you step away from the magnifying glass, you'll notice that a lot of what they're doing isn't really unique to them. Yeah. I mean, like, it's like movie studios, right? Average thing that comes out of DreamWorks or Disney or, you know, when I say Disney, I'm talking about like all of the sub studios that they have below them. You know, 20th Century Fox, even Warner Brothers, which has like almost all of the Kubrick films, and you know, it's like Clint Eastwood's home studio, like the kind of studio you would expect to just keep churning out classics. You know, there's a lot of very forgettable stuff that comes out of those. You know, that comes out of some of those studios. It's just that I don't really pay them a whole lot of mind. Now, I mean, again, everybody likes to bitch about Michael Bay movies, right? And I'm not going to say they're not justified. To say, like, I can't really remember the last time I got out of a Michael Bay movie and I'm like, man, what a good use of my time. That was such a great story or something like that. Like, it's, you know, but then it's not like the last Michael Bay movie that I went into. I think it was like Transformers, actually. I really haven't watched what he's done. It's not like I'm, like, at this point, I only have myself to blame if I'm disappointed at the end of a Michael Bay movie. Like, he does what he does very well. It is not my kind of thing, but you know, would I ever be justified in saying, you know, we need to ban Michael Bay because it's not good cinema? I'm like, how do you know? Like, since when did you decide what movies I'm allowed to watch and not watch? So that's, in the end, that's where some of this, and, you know, ticket prices keep going up, and they bring in 3D, and 3D isn't really that appropriately used in a lot of movies, but it's raising the ticket prices. So, you know, like, there's lots of complaints that you can make about the practices of movie studio. And I mean, again, the same thing here. Like, movie studios, by definition, are selling the sizzle in a trailer, right? How many comedies have you watched where every single good joke in that comedy is in the trailer, and like the movie's just garbage? You know, like, isn't that very similar to what I was complaining about when it came to, early access behaviors? So, I mean, again, perspective is kind of important to keep on these things as well. I still like to think, like, in the end, I am a consumer, and I still like to consider myself, much more, like, the thing is that the businesses are just generally a little bit more of a savvy actor, right? Like, they generally have a better idea of what they're doing, what the consequences of their actions are. And I hate that kind of thinking, because, like, if you ask me about any political issue or something like that, I'm like, no, people need to be able to decide. You know, they're not machines, they're not robots. You know, when it comes to issues of advertising, I'm like, look, you know, people, like, I've never went out and wanted to buy a Toyota because I saw a Toyota commercial. I just think the best that it's going to do is influence somebody who is going to buy a car to, you know, consider, you know, the Chevy over the Ford or something like that. Like, there is a little bit of disconnect in terms of how I think about other things in the world. And, you know, and these gaming issues. And I just, like, honestly, I need to just admit it and, and deal with it as best as I can. But I mean, on the other hand, right? Like, I have a passion for gaming. I have, I definitely want to see as many good games as possible be made. And I would like people to enjoy gaming as much as possible. So, like, I guess the big thing, I think what maybe informs some of my more militant feelings about things like early access and pre-orders is I acknowledge the fact that I don't go out to the movies that much. And I mean, part of that is probably a reflection of my, the stage I am in my life in terms of things like being in school and, having other demands on my time that, that maybe just don't give me the free time to go to the movies as much. But I will also say, like, there've been a lot of times when I've gone to the movies and I've just generally been disappointed. And I think what might be informing some of my worries in terms of the way that early access and things like that gets done is that I would hope that I don't have an equivalent in terms of gaming, which is just like I become very apathetic about, X, Y, or Z release because I've just suddenly become very jaded in terms of what the market is offering. I don't necessarily have any recommendations for reform for gaming, but I think maybe that's probably what's causing me to take up these issues. Because I mean, in the end, like as we said before, like who's being hurt when dumb people buy crappy games? Lens flares. How's it going, Shio? Okay, another thing. Actually, I maybe should also roll back a little bit on the... Why hasn't he had a son yet? I guess because I was working so slow on that war. But still. Do your duty for the House of Rose, good sir. Is she too old? No, 29. And she's a mastermind theologian. Like, Michael Bay... You can thumb your nose at what Michael Bay does. I would challenge you, though, to find a lot of directors who are capable of replicating what he does. Like, he has definitely created a style of filmmaking that is very much his own. It's not quite to my taste. There's apparently I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently on Armageddon, Ben Affleck said to him, like, wouldn't it be a lot easier to train a bunch of astronauts to drill than to train a bunch of oilmen to become astronauts? And apparently, like, Mr. Bay did not react very well to that comment. But it's, it is what it is. Well, thanks a lot for stopping by, Alex. It was great to have you host. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your images. I do have them saved, so I'm sorry I couldn't give you my thoughts other than the postage stamps that I saw. I'm sorry that I couldn't give those while you were here, but I hope to see you soon, and I will have definitely seen them in their full glory. Thank you for sharing them with us, though. I'm just automatically going to say he's not a heretic. And I keep on pausing, but I need to actually give away these lands. Again, I think it's probably... Oh, you know what? I don't have a brother anymore. Well, I mean, one's already landed. Wait a minute. Didn't I give him the duchy? You know, I have a feeling I'm going to run into that a lot, so I'll give away these titles first. So the pain about that, like, what I should be able to do is just usurp the title, but in this case, it's the Abbasid Empire, which is constantly at war. So until they deal with the Hindu uprising, which is 32%. Actually, you know what? These are territories that I won in a war, so I should be able to hang on to them for a while. Let's deal with rebellion in the realm first. All right, 76%. Yeah, well, there's one obvious faction to deal with. I hope that's right. Yeah. You heard talk of intrigue. You came to the right stream, Dahlia. We just finished a minor religious dispute over in the Holy Land. You'll notice that the Empire of Britannia now extends to certain parts of the Middle East. We've got a little bit just above Italy, a couple of Scandinavian holdings, England, Iceland, Iberia, Northwest Africa. House of Rose gets around, my friend. How's it going? I'd really love to say that I'd appreciate some help, but I'm holding out the vain hope that I'm going to be able to turn this into a duchy and give it away. Why am I losing money? Oh, I know why. Okay. I hate doing this, but I am going to borrow from the Jewry. Just because if I let that go too long, then I'm going to have smuggling problems. I love that emote, by the way, Dahlia. I miss most of the system talk with System Shock. With my great martial ability, I have rounded up and executed the robber bands that were plaguing Damascus. Yes, actually, that was one thing I should have considered when I took over these holdings, which is the Abbasids were bankrupt, so there's probably bandits running all over the place. Man, they've already got their forces back into pretty good shape. So, Dahlia, I should let you know that the if you want to go in terms of time periods, Crusader Kings 2 obviously is the earliest. Then following that is Europa Universalis 4, which kind of, in my opinion, is sort of Paradox Development Studios' flagship product. And then the third in the chronological order, Victoria 2, is currently on sale, a flash sale no less, in the Steam sales. So, it's a good opportunity to pick up this grand strategy game that I'm sure you'll love. And then, of course, Hearts of Iron is also is the final one in terms of the chronological order. Hey, we've converted more people to the one true faith. So, I believe with this... What religion is this? Yeah, so... I am about to exterminate West African religion from the planet in 1407. Well, just slightly after 1407. How's that for colonialism? You're already worried about the games you're buying so far. So what have you picked up, Black Dahlia? We were talking quite a bit about early access and things like that. But we were also talking about the quality of the Steam sale, and kind of talking about recommendations. I've definitely picked up a couple of games based on recommendations that the Steam stream made. So do you have anything that you are interested in or that you picked up or would like to share with the class? I really need to figure out how to get back into the black again. I mean, maybe I just stop reinforcing my retinues until I'm solvent. What's happening with that war? 32%. Okay, I need to get rid of these titles. So it's... So... It's always so hard to find a male heir at this point. Sister the Fourth. Ah, yes, our titles. Haven't bought anything during the sale. So far you've gotten Depth. Yeah, I love watching Weebro play Depth. I'm really looking forward to the Team Panda streams that come out of Depth. Wolfenstein the Old Blood. I definitely think Wolfenstein looks really interesting. Again, I definitely do not have a PC that will be able to play it, but... going to challenge... Oh, and Sniper Elite 3. So I think I got Was it Sniper Elite 3 or Sniper Elite 2? I got one of them in like a Humble Bundle. I've never played it, though. Boo, Steam sale. Your wallet has officially gone into hiding. Yeah, you know, honestly... Like, I always just make a list... and I try to be as sensible as I can as far as, you know, as far as the things that I buy. Like, I try to... how do I say this? Like, after I rank them, I sort of consider the probability that they're going to go on sale at another point. I try to, you know, say, okay, realistically, am I going to play this within the next 6 months? Because if you don't play it within the next 6 months, just wait for the winter sale. Stuff like that. And that's how I, you know, like, obviously I'm not flush with cash. But it's a way that I can maintain a fairly healthy library of games that interest me without, like, going crazy as some people do and just, like, buy everything that goes on sale. Now, clearly I'm going to be giving this guy more titles than he can deal with. But at least in this case, I can give him the duchy, and he'll sort out the rest. It may have been V2, but the game... Okay. What games did I get? Or did you... I definitely told the stream. So I got Homeworld, and I got Crypt of the Necrodancer. I'm really enjoying Crypt of the Necrodancer. And then I also picked up Wasteland 2, which I haven't played yet. I do have my eye on Dark Souls 2, but I don't believe my computer can presently run it. So, with that in mind, actually, so I met with a good friend of mine yesterday. And she was very kind to buy me a lot of whiskey and actually a very good whiskey. She is an accountant for a very large firm, so definitely a wealthier individual. So decided to get me something for my birthday, which was extremely kind of her and probably firmly unnecessary. But I believe it was implied that she will help me with my taxes, which are now several years overdue. I'm going to kind of see how much cash I have left over from that. And then what I think I'm going to do is put a little bit aside in terms of, like, basically make a list in terms of a PC that I would build, like an ideal PC that I would build, and just realistically see what the cost would be, how much I have available to dedicate to that, and maybe look into trying to set aside a little bit or find some savings in terms of things that I'm normally doing and look to building a proper gaming PC. Realistically, I don't think this is going to happen while I'm in grad school, but I am making a little bit of money in terms of doing research. So I think it would be good at least to have the goal, and then if I have the opportunity to, to follow through on that, just because it gives me more variety in terms of games, and I wouldn't have to worry about some of these constraints that I run into on the Mac version of OBS. You can probably play Dark Souls 2. I already have Dark Souls 1. I've beaten it. I heard that Scholar of the First Sin is supposed to be an incredible version. Like, everybody was disappointed with the original Dark Souls 2, but once they released Scholar of the First Sin, apparently it made the game significantly better. Alright, Crusade for Hungary. His Holiness, the Pope Leo VIII, is worried about the state of the souls in the Kingdom of Hungary. The heathens under High Chief Brogol of Ungvar have no hope for salvation and will suffer the eternal fires unless they can be brought to Christ in this life. Any Christian so willing is offered complete absolution of sins in the armed mission against the Tengri barbarians. So, this is extremely tempting to participate in. Because I share a border with it. And if I contribute the most to the crusade, I get that territory. The problem is that I don't have a lot of money right now, and I've already borrowed money from the Jewry. So, but it's 15,000 troops. I could wipe them out. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's raise our army levies. I'll give kind of this token contribution from these units here. I know in an earlier cast somebody was talking about how you can raise troops in other provinces, but I don't believe that's actually true. Once the Steam sale is over, you'd like to see a full list of all the games that System Shock picked up? Yeah. Well, I mean, I won't lie. I usually don't buy games unless they're in a Steam sale, and of course, now that Humble Bundles are a thing, obviously I participate in that. But, you know what? I need to go on the pilgrimage first. Why can't I go on the pilgrimage as not a commander, for God's sake? I usually don't buy games except for these bundles. These sales and bundles. So, like, usually I just put money aside over the course of the year, and so I do tend to wind up buying quite a few games. Although, again, I don't think I'm going to go crazy on them, because, again, there's always that question in terms of how much time I actually have. Alright, so looks like I failed to deal with the invader. That's not bad, because that just gives me a chance to send assassins on the way to the Caliph, or I would if apparently I don't have valid plots. Oh, right. Sorry about that. What I think is the real wallet killer for me is when small indies that I'm interested in tend to go on like $5 deals, because those add up, right? Like all of a sudden you buy 6 games, you spent $30, and then it's like, okay, well I could have bought Scholar of the First Sin for that. Kate, sorry, I thought I sent you a Twitter message in response. It looked really interesting. I don't believe it's on any kind of like a flash sale or something like that, so I'm reserving participation. But I'm very interested. Like it looks really cool, and I think you like that was a good spot on your part, because that's definitely the kind of game that I think I would enjoy. So thank you for that. I'd check your Twitter messages, though, because I definitely... I'm almost certain I replied. But not that I said anything different from here. The one thing I haven't seen, though, I don't know if it had a video trailer. I didn't actually see any gameplay footage from it. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Okay, you know what? I'm not even going to bother trying to go on this pilgrimage. Let's just join the crusade. And then I'm going to put my ruler in this army. I need to be kind of careful because he's not that strong militarily. Neither is this guy, though, so... This is basically just so I can actually get into the region. To the righteous Emperor Macus, your wisdom and mercy are legendary. I gladly accept your offer of assistance in my war. Let our enemies tremble. Pope Leo VIII. Alright, so we've gotten rid of the most dangerous faction. And now we have another dangerous faction. So what I'm doing here is actually a little bit dangerous just because I don't know... Oh, there's that force. That's actually mildly concerning. Mostly just because I don't have a good way of getting a large force to deal with them without spending a lot of money. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold control and see what levies I can raise. Probably nothing very meaningful. What about on the continent? That's definitely not enough to deal with that force. And I have a feeling the Abbasids are getting stronger. Nope, still 31, so that's okay. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do, I will take the slightly counterintuitive step of cancelling my levy reinforcements. I'll get these jokers on this side. I think I'll actually disband the remainder. I'll actually add... I have a feeling I might be undersupplying my forces, but basically I'm just going to get a force together to deal with that that invasion. And then... I guess depending on how much money it's costing me, I would... I mean, once upon a time we were making money when we were going after the Abbasid Empire. So hopefully we can take some boats and take out Hungary. Looks like these guys are getting crushed, so that's good for my war contribution. There we go. I finally stand before the destination of the crusade. With sword in hand, I am ready to destroy the walls of Vass. Our armies now stand poised to take part in the crusade for the Kingdom of Hungary. Deus Vult! So that was just so I could get the Crusader title, to be completely honest. I don't understand why I'm not able to lay siege. So... Oh, you know what? That is why. So now I need to be a little... Okay, actually, first thing that I'm doing is changing the structure of this army. Yeah, so here we're making money again, so we should be good. We should be good to actually basically just take over that entire region. So let's get ourselves some boats. This is almost certainly too much, but... Oh, cancelled one of the important ones. That's not enough. I think I'll just individually take care of the ones that are beside. Okay, now I haven't disbanded any fleets that I need. You recently discovered the wonder of BlueStacks. You can now play all your favorite mobile games that you had on your recently departed tablet on your PC, and it keeps you occupied enough to avoid the Steam sale. That's good. Yeah, this is the big thing, is that I think most people's libraries, and I'll include my own in this, are at a point where we technically, like, nobody really needs another game. Now, I will say that a lot of my library is also informed by, like, Humble Bundles, which I don't get the option in terms of I don't get the option in terms of whether or not I have Knights of Pen and Paper +1. Like I wasn't that interested in the game when I tried it. I tried to give it a fair shot, but it wasn't really for me. So in that sense, the Steam sale isn't necessarily that good because people just wind up buying stuff that they don't need. Again, people are grown-ups. They can spend the money however they want, but let's face it, a lot of Steam sales are just like, oh, it's such a good deal, I need to buy it. Or at least they used to be. But on the other hand, too, like when I look at some of the titles that I haven't played through yet that would fall into that category, it's stuff like Endless Legend, which is sort of a variation on games that I already play, like Civilization. So I'm hoping anything that I get this Steam sale would be to pick up something that is a little bit outside of my normal, my normal comfort zone. But we'll see, right? Like it's easy for me to talk this game, but whether or not I actually implement it is another question. So the plan with this, I still seem to be doing okay as far as cash is concerned, which is good. So I'm going to use this boat to take these troops to my territories first, move them down into North Africa once their morale is up. And then once we kind of clear out this rebellion... Actually, that was stupid of me to drop those ships. Because I'm gonna need them to move to Hungary anyway. But basically, once I'm done dealing with the invasion, I will participate in the crusade, and I believe the numbers that I'm bringing will just raise my score to such an overwhelming level that I will gain those territories. I gotta be careful not to cancel the ships that I actually want to take. Also, because the numbers are larger than they were when I first talked about this, the recommendation I will make for everybody on the Steam sale is flash sales on stuff that you want is pretty much a big green light, buy it right away. If something goes on a daily sale, that's a pretty good indicator that you can buy it. But again, that title might turn into a flash sale later. So if it's not something that you absolutely have to have, it's not that bad of an idea to wait. Okay, that's a massive disappointment that I didn't get to kill that. Finally, you run into something like there's a bunch of stuff on sale right now, including Crusader Kings 2. You have no reason to buy it right now, because if it's going to be that way for the entire Steam sale, you've already waited 6 months for it. What's another 10 days? All the Crusader Kings 2 stuff, unless they put it on sale and it turns out, there's an additional discount on top of that. Why not just wait for a why not see what you're basically doing if you buy at just the normal sale price. So again, case in point would be Scholar of the First Sin. If you buy it at the $27 mark now, then you're canceling the possibility that you can get it cheaper. Once you're at the last day of the sale, there's not going to be any other opportunity where it's cheaper. So it makes sense to buy it then. But I really don't actually understand why, these games that, people have quote-unquote always wanted, I really don't understand when they become top sellers at the ordinary sale price, because you're just missing out on an opportunity to pick it up even cheaper. In my opinion, you know, obviously, it's all well and good to think about it theoretically, but people have their time preferences, and seeing it at a good deal kind of makes you want to buy it, I guess. Still, there's really no good reason to any of the stuff that just goes on an ordinary sale price. I don't actually see that compelling of a reason to buy it, because again, you're it's like a pre-order, right? You're throwing away the option for later. Oh, I just got your message. Okay, I had a suspicion that was kind of how you'd reply. I'm saying this partially tongue in cheek, but no, it was honestly a good find that you made. I was very happy when you sent that message. Here I'm just extracting a whole lot of money from the Abbasids. Oh. I should have paid attention to what these guys were doing. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna... It sucks, but I'm just gonna disband them. So I'm sort of in the running, but not really as far as contribution is concerned, so I kind of need to wrap this up quickly and get to Hungary. Your issue is that you have no money, so I'm avoiding the Steam sale during the sale, so you don't torture yourself seeing games that you want on sale but can't get. Yeah, I think that's a smart decision. You're only going on Steam to do game updates and sometimes check your library and achievements. Yeah, I mean, like, obviously Steam is a gaming platform. You don't, you can safely ignore the storefront. And at this point in time, you're only really hyped about CK2 Horde mod, which you're planning to buy on release. So is that the, that's the new, Horse Lords or something like that, right? I almost wonder if I should just split this stack and start going to Hungary, but usually whenever I do that, I wind up paying for it, so... Let's just wipe these guys out once and for all. And I was going to say too, I know I said this earlier, but I don't really follow my own advice on some of the sale stuff as well, because honestly, I suspect when the new expansion comes out, Way of Life is going to be is going to cost less than it currently does at the price. So because it's the most recent DLC, I believe it is 33% off. Now my suspicion is that with the release of the Horse Lords or whatever the new DLC is they're going to put Crusader Kings on sale again, just like they did Europa Universalis and the Common Sense DLC. And Way of Life is going to go down to 50%. I don't know that for sure. And I mean, the price at 33% is reasonable enough for me to want to pick it up. But I mean, again, I haven't picked up Way of Life just because I want to see whether or not Crusader Kings 2 goes on like a 75% discount, which it almost certainly will, and whether or not they include the DLC inside that. If it goes down to 75, or if it goes down to 75% and the DLC remains at the same price, I'll probably just pick up Way of Life. But it's just, these are the kinds of things that I think about in terms of sales, just to make my dollar go a little bit further. So actually, I'll ask you just, Willem, I don't believe we've talked about this yet. Do you have any opinions about Europa Universalis 4 or any of the other Grand Strategy titles? Alright. Can grant the title on him now. Now the challenge here is I'm going to wind up losing a lot of troops to attrition. But fortunately with that, with taking out that vassal, I don't have as much of a threat from these factions. I'm still gonna take care of Essex in particular because he's participating in multiple plots. But I honestly don't see a good way around the Crusade for Hungary other than just to run as many troops in as I possibly can and hope for the best. I also really want to know when Italy became Burgundy. And do I need to fear them more because they became Burgundy? Not right now. Actually, this would be a really good time to claim some of this territory. I mean, assuming I could get a CB for... I mean, there's issues with that plot, but... Come back on your shields, or don't come back at all. Or sorry, come back with your shield or on it. So again, this is the one thing I hate about the way I'm doing all of this, is I'm losing substantial portions of my force just simply by walking. Walking to where I want to go. Let me just get an idea in terms of what these intervening... Okay, so... both of these can't support my numbers. Wow, okay, these are a lot thinner than I thought they would be. Which is okay, we just need to be smart in terms of how we divide the troops. It does make it a little more difficult to just face roll over the Tengris, but as long as I kind of keep my forces reasonably close, I should be able to deal with any large forces that they have. What are their numbers at? 7,000? Okay, so any single stack I have is actually going to be able to take them out. I have a feeling I'm probably going to wind up stacking these troops, and I'm going to lose some to attrition. But we'll see. I think the next thing I'm going to do as well is with that retinue, I'm going to I'm going to do the reinforce at half speed and just keep an eye on what's happening to my wealth. I suspect it'll start going down, but I just want to see the rate at which it falls, because I would still like to get those numbers better. What? West African religion is spreading. This is not what we intended. Also, I suspect all of the penalties for becoming a new ruler are gone, so... Well, I still don't have a lot of subjects that really like me, but let's at least start appointing some successors for these bishops. Pretty much to a man, they're gonna like the Pope more than me, but... I suspect the appointment by the Pope would be similar. I think we'll see how far I can get in this crusade. Ideally, I'll wrap up the stream once the crusade is done, but we'll just see how long it takes. I kind of wish I knew where these enemy troops were. It'd be nice if I can get a little bit more combat experience. And it actually looks like we're still making money, which is nice. I was just going to say, it'd be nice if we could... it'd be nice if we could just find a big stack of enemy troops to... like that, except that I don't actually have enough... I don't have the numbers to support. Alright, that'll do. That's a terrifying number, actually. I have a feeling I'm making a very large mistake with these sieges. Oh god. Why are they losing? Yeah, so now I've got faction problems. That was foolish of me. Looks like they wound up paying pretty heavily for that themselves, though, so... I think the way to play this one is to... Okay, so they arrive May 11th. I'm going to arrive June 4th. As long as nobody changes where they're going. Yeah, so I'm going to beat them here. I'm going to intercept them here. They're at a weaker morale, but I have more numbers. The biggest thing I want to avoid is these guys reinforcing here. And I am losing for some reason. Nope, nope, we won. We're definitely losing this fight, though, so let's see if we can make something happen. My marshal quit because of my disastrous tactics. Sorry, the commentary is starting to slip a little bit. I think I probably am pulling the stream a little bit longer than I should have, so... So, I mean, what I'm most disappointed by is that this is actually a very common mistake that I wind up making in this game. Where I wind up... I wind up undercommitting to fights, and I just wind up losing a lot more troops than I should. Now, in the end, do I think we're going to lose the crusade? No, we're going to win. But now I have factions to deal with because I lost too many troops. pursuing these pursuing these fights in areas where I don't have very good infrastructure, where I don't have I think we'll just threaten. Oh, hang on. He's brave, so let's obligate him. Fortunately, my Spymaster is actually one of the most effective that I've had. They always seem to deliver when I need. But this should be enough to take out the last of their forces. But again, those hopes that I had in terms of my commitment... Oh, actually, I'm at 56%, so... So now we kind of have a priority on winning this. Man, I'm really screwing up some of these fights. So they're heading to Gemmer, so they're just going to get torn to pieces there. I think what we do now... Okay, they're still sitting on 3,000 troops, which is of a concern. What about these guys? They're at 8,000. I think the smart move here is just to do a siege on the outskirts. Until they actually show where those 3,000 troops are coming from. I don't want to be running around deep in their territory. And I mean, there's 6,000 papal troops that can absorb the blow. So next thing I want to look at is my retinue. Okay, yeah, so basically the retinue got destroyed. I'll do a full reinforcement because I suspect I can afford it, but... And I think we should probably just chase this down and exterminate it. Uh-oh! Oh! We're back. We're back in this cliffhanger. The Abbasid Empire just declared war to reclaim their territories when I'm wasting my troops in a crusade. To the vile spider Macus, may Allah destroy your house. This is a formal declaration of war. Our armies shall meet on the field of battle. So, 124.47 thousand Sunnis versus 64,000 or 64.23 thousand good Christian crusaders currently occupied in Hungary. On that note, my friends, I'm going to pay off my debt to the Jewish moneylenders. And that seems as good of a time for us to stop. That's what we did the last time. I'm going to need to figure out how I'm going to do this one, because unfortunately, unlike last time, I don't have a lot of wriggle room in terms of dealing with these sieges. I might just need to cede the territory. He wants the Duchy of Damascus and the County of Damascus, so we'll see. He's got yeah, I'm the only war he's working on, so I have going for me that these regions... I mean, in the end, these fights always come down to what's the maximum I can deploy in any one of these single areas. So that's an advantage that I have. And then I suspect I'm going to be able to call in some of the Christian forces to distract his troops. But this is definitely a much more challenging fight. I really should have been paying attention to their numbers. But On that note, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. That is it for me. I am, as always, going to find somebody to host and pass on the goodwill. Sadly, don't know any other Crusader Kings 2 streamers, but I will make sure that we can get you in touch with somebody who's doing well. It was a delight to have a chat about early access and pre-ordering with all of you. I don't think we had any follows tonight, which is a bit of a shame, but for those of you who are perhaps lurking and unfamiliar with the channel, I do Crusader Kings every Friday night. And we'd be happy to see you again if you're so inclined. And feel free to hit that follow button if you like what you saw. We will definitely be back on Monday. We'll not be... Again, Fridays are dedicated for Crusader Kings 2. Monday we might continue Endless Space. And there will definitely be activity over the weekend. What will most likely happen is I'll do a Dota 2 cast with Nick the Peasant. The way that normally works is... Oh! Speak of the devil. So... Somebody just followed, but I didn't see it appear on the screen. So let's see who this mysterious benefactor is. Sorry, that didn't work. Oh, just Willem. Sorry, I thought you were a follower before. Thank you very much for following tonight. So we hit our quota of at least one follow. That's extremely generous of you. But yeah, so plans for the weekend? Normally, when I do a cast with Nick the Peasant, because of my internet connection issues, or rather my low bandwidth, I will host the stream with him. So the way these things normally work, I'll put out a tweet, I'll probably start the stream just to let people know that it's going to be hosted at Nick's place. I will host him, and then we'll cast the games through his end. I'll also try to do some other streaming on the weekend as well. But if nothing else, you know for sure I'm going to be back on Monday for something regular, and then we'll continue the adventures of House Rose on next Friday. Have a good night, everybody, and please feel free to stick around a little bit. I will find somebody to host. Because we had some delay issues tonight, I'm going to stop the stream, and we will do the host momentarily after. So if you decide not to hang around for the next stream, I hope you find what you're looking for on Twitch, and I wish you all a very good night and a very good weekend.